Welcome back to Making the Cut, Week 7. Oh my God, time is moving at a pace that I am not comfortable with. Are you aware, Lance, that this is the halfway point of the fantasy season?
Time for the celebration. Made it halfway.
Yep. If you're still looking at this and you're still hearing about this, it means you're halfway home. So there you go. Because yeah, the last week of the regular season is week 14. So we're halfway there. By this point, you should have a pretty good idea of what your team is, and it's perfectly acceptable at this point to start pushing the panic button. If that's where we are. If you're 2-5, feel free to panic. You're there. You're there. We always tell people not to panic, but no, that's where we're getting to. It's always an
Little
interesting
panic
time of
is
the year.
healthy.
It's always an interesting time of the year because the fantasy trade deadline is coming up here pretty soon. That is usually around like week 10 or 11. So it depends on your format. Obviously, depends on your individual league, but that's also coming up here in the next like 3 or 4 weeks. So if you're going to do something, now is the time to pull the ripcord here in the next like 2 weeks or so, and really time to make critical evaluation choices on uh, what's going on in the background. So just to give everybody an update on that, that's where we are. What's up, Chuck? But that's kind of the high level of it, Lance. So how's everything going on your side of the world over there? As far how are your individual teams doing?
I I'm kind of spread out all over the place. I have one team that finally took my first loss this past week, and that was I'm gonna blame that one entirely on not having Justin Jefferson, even though there was other mistakes along the way. But you know what? We're just going with that, and then a lot of them are kind of falling right in that 500 or you know range there. So just kind of still plugging away.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Uh,
hmm
I have the majority of my teams are all 5-1, except for I have one team that just will not be normal.
Yeah.
It just won't. It just won't. It's a good team. It just won't. It just won't program, and I don't know why. It just won't do it. It's I'm 3-3, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I should be this team. This is the best team I have. Should
hmm
easily be 5-1. And you go and look at the overall scoring for the league, and it's like, oh, this is why I've scored
Yeah.
the fourth most points in the league, but I'm number 2 in points against. That's how that kind
You're
of
just
goes.
playing the wrong people at the wrong time.
It's not even that. It's just everybody just goes off against my team. Like whoever you're like I should publish the lineups of people that are playing against me so that you know who to start because
Right.
it's like clockwork. Whatever whoever is I could be favored to win by 40 and I'll find a way to lose that game because somebody will have the greatest game they've ever had.
Well, of
Like
course.
it's just the way that it goes. It's just the way that it's been going with that whole season. So I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, just so we're clear, yeah, we're in a situation now where, like I said, we're halfway home. So if you're still watching this for guillotine purposes, congratulations, you're halfway to the clubhouse. Uh, and this is where it gets interesting because it starts to get the teams that are remaining start to get better. But the converse side of that is the teams that get chopped have better goodies for you to go pick through, which is why I recommend trying to save your money if you can, because now the good teams are going to start getting eliminated, and it's like, oh, that guy had like real stuff, real things that I might be able to actually work with. And in regular fantasy, obviously, yeah, this is a time. This is a critical evaluation period. This is where for the next like 2 weeks, you want to really be thinking critically about, okay, if I'm totally toast, then I need to start either if it's a keeper or a dynasty or something, I need to start making decisions for next year. Honestly, if it's a standard redraft, I need to start making decisions to try and pull this out of the tailspin now. If my team is underperforming, because we're going to run out of time. Trade deadlines in probably 3 to 4 weeks, depending on your exact league and where you're playing. And if it's dynasty, you need to start thinking about, okay, am I going to try to win it now, or do we want to start stockpiling draft picks and young players for the future? So it's now is the time when you start making real hard choices, and you got to really like think because you have enough data by this point. There's no more guessing. It's no, we know what's going to happen and what we want to do. This is also where, like for example, if you're really good in a team that isn't a dynasty or a keeper, you want to start thinking about your playoff roster in the future. Like you don't really need to be holding on to some of these project rookies for too much longer. You want to start moving on from that and start figuring out, okay, who are my handcuffs that I need to be pursuing if I don't have them? What do I need, as far as if I wasn't carrying a backup QB because I have Mahomes, maybe I want to look at having a backup QB now because didn't matter before, but soon we're going to want to I don't know what this means.
Anthony Richardson.
Oh, probably. Probably.
I mean, is it redraft or dynasty?
I mean, overall, okay, it's a keeper league. I see what's going on. It's a keeper league in the background. That's a keeper question. It would depend. 3 keepers. I hate keeping quarterbacks. So there's that. Typically, I would argue to you that you probably have 3 players that I would rather keep than quarterback. Quarterback is not something I enjoy keeping. Quarterback is the thing you keep when you don't have better choices. Quarterback is largely replaceable, especially Anthony Richardson, who's done what exactly? Like he's showed up, he's showed some flashes and a little bit of promise, and it's a keeper league, so that's good. That's nice. I'm sure it's inexpensive, broadly speaking, but this is where I would need more information. I want to know like who are your running backs, who are your wide receivers. These are things that I am much more interested in keeping. Quarterback and tight end, unless that tight end's name is Travis Kelce, I really don't care. And don't keep defenses or kickers. That's totally pointless. The variation year on year is too high. So really, you want to focus on running backs and wide receivers that you can keep at a value that are going to help you. So he's keepable, but I also wouldn't keep Hurts at a second. I think that's pretty evident just based on this year that there's variance within this. So it's like I probably wouldn't pay up for any quarterback in the second at all. Possible exception being Mahomes, but even then, yeah, it's he might be keepable, but you're gonna have to look at your team, Chuck, and post it in here if you want. Post your running backs and wide receivers because yeah, please don't do it while you're driving. That would be bad. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll do our normal thing here, Lance. Let's just kick this off. So and now also we get into the lovely second run of buys. Besides we've had a couple buys already, and it's already thrown a wrench into some of it. But this week we have a whole bunch of fun buys. Weirdly, week 8 there are no buys. I don't know why they chose to do that, but there are no buys next
That is
week.
strange.
I don't know why, but that's the truth. That's the facts of the matter. Really weird. Yeah, and then today, excuse me, this week we could go through it just to lay it out for folks because you're going to have to make some adjustments in all fantasy formats, but particularly Guillotine because that's where it can get nasty. This is why we don't recommend bye-week stacking. Let's see. Yeah, there's no buys in week 8 or week 12, Lance. It's super weird. I don't know why they did that. It's strange.
That is interesting. I feel like they haven't done that in years past, so I
I don't
wonder.
recall a time
Yeah,
when that was the case. But this is one of the biggest bye weeks, just in general. You have this is the most bye weeks we've seen thus far. Yeah, you have 6 teams: Panthers, Bengals, Cowboys, Texans, Jets, and Titans. So you have a lot of people that are going to be dealing with bye week issues this week.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a lot of that going on. So you're going to have some weaker teams to deal with, or you will be one of the weaker teams, and you're going to have to get kind of creative to figure this out. Because if you think about it that way, you're removing, what is that? 30 divided by 36. You're talking about removing like 24% of the teams from the 24% of the available player pool effectively is not available.
Yeah.
That's not great.
Almost a quarter of the league is not
a quarter
available.
of the league
That's
is basically not playing. Yeah, it's not great. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to make some adjustments. You're probably going to have to do something you don't like. So this is where we get a little loosey-goosey with some of the waiver wire advice, particularly if you need some kind of streaming option. So I'm going to go first, and I'm just going to rattle it off. Things that of which things that are generally available for quarterback. in a weird week. It's gonna be Sam Howell would be
Mhm.
what I'm kind of looking at there in the background, and it's not pretty, but believe it or not, Sam Howell, aside from that one disastrous week where he put up a 5 against Buffalo, has been pretty good. He's been pretty good. You can't really argue with it. He's been averaging something like it's about right at 20. His game log is 16. If you remove the 5, 16, 21, 19, 26, 18. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. I wish the Commanders were better, but that's not really his fault. That's that's Ron Rivera's issue, and not for much longer.
Mhm.
My favorite part was 2 weeks ago. They were asking Ron Rivera what halftime adjustments he made. He literally looked at the camera and said, "I don't know. I let them figure it out." And I'm like, "That's the Ron Rivera I'm used to watching. That's Ron Rivera. Doesn't know nothing. Don't ask me any questions. I just work here. Thanks,
Yep.
Ron." Uh, so yeah, Ron would be Sam Howell would be number one at quarterback. Number two would actually be Derek Carr. Just because we've seen what happens when Derek Carr is out there, not just this year, but also like career wise. It's not quite at the level of Sam Howell, but you can expect something like 15 to 17 points typically. It's
Mhm.
not great, but he won't kill you. But every I'd say there's like one in every 5 games Derek Carr plays where he might actually like completely poo the
Kill you.
bed and yeah, and
Yeah.
might kill you. So you gotta just be aware of that. And then number 3 is Baker Mayfield. I know he had a brutal game last week against Detroit. I'm willing to run this back out when you remove 6 teams from the pool. That's really
Mhm.
what that's about. And then the Detroit defense has been playing way above its weight class. They're just white hot right now. They've got all the momentum in the world. Uh, so I'm a little nervous about that. He'd be higher up the list if I wasn't. But fortunately for him, they get Atlanta. I know that's a division game, but I'm expecting better results against Atlanta's defense. Uh, and then the other reason Sam Howell was number one, by the way, is they're drawing the Giants. So anybody against
Oh,
the Giants,
that's cake matchup.
anybody against the Giants is usually what I tell people. It's like if they're playing the
Mhm.
Giants, you want them. And then the last one will be Dobbs. Dobbs just kind of hangs around. He's not. It's brutal to watch, honestly, and he hasn't been putting up the 20s he was earlier.
But
And
he's
he's
still
playing.
running the ball. And I mean,
Yeah,
he's
but they're playing.
he's
They're playing the Seahawks is the problem,
yeah.
and I'm just not really. I liked it more with Connor.
Mhm.
The Keontae Ingram experience was very underwhelming. Bring free Amari DiMarcario because if it's going to be Keontae Ingram, they ain't winning nothing. So that's pretty ugly. So those are the guys that I would steer you into because it's going to be a challenge. You're going to have guys on bye, so you're probably going to be especially even in Guillotine, you're going to be looking for different things. But Howell's the one I have circled and starred, where it's like, give me that against the Giants because I feel like that's how I could get a real nice result. Everything else on that list that I gave you has issues. So what do
Mhm.
you think, Lance? Where do you land on trying to help people with that this week?
Yeah, I think Howell's obviously the guy you're trying to go after if by some chance he's still out there,
He's pretty available.
Yeah,
He's only rostered in about a third of leagues,
a
so
third.
yeah,
Okay.
about 30. It's actually slightly less than 33%. So we'll call it a third. We'll round up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's been efficient with the ball. He's done very well, and I mean, he's got
He's a
a
hell of a
great
lot
cast
better than
around
Taylor
him.
Heineke is.
Absolutely. No, and with the enemy kind of drawing it up there, I'm starting to buy in a lot more, with that stinker he put up early in the season. It was kind of worried about that, but now he's kind of gotten back to that level and sustained it for a couple weeks. So,
If you throw that game out, he's
he's
been
had
in
a great year.
he's been in double digits and he's been above 15 points in every single game. And that
Mhm.
game, by the way, where he pooed the bed was against the Bills.
Yeah. So
So
I
it's a little
mean,
hard to like fault him for that.
no. The
In like
Bills have
it was
had
like his third career start
yeah.
against the Bills. Like I'm not. It's a little hard for me to want to like just be like, oh, you're terrible. Like, I mean, we're talking about everybody else on this list has also had a bad game in
Right.
there. So
Right. No, and I mean, especially when you can draw the Giants, that's a
that helps.
matchup you're praying for
That
right there.
helps.
So, um,
It's tough, man. You start removing
you
a
know,
third of the league out of this, and it gets really ugly really fast.
yeah, I mean, I'd have to go Baker. After that, I between Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, he's got, a ton of talent around him. So they're not asking him to do
Tom Hanks.
anyone to get tickled as a prank.
I stand by Tom Hanks is my answer.
Yeah, that's definitely Alan Rickman.
Well, that would be fun. Okay.
Rest in peace, but Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman's also technically an illegal answer, but okay. Because Tom Hanks would be fun to get it on camera, and also Tom Hanks wouldn't punch you in the face for that type of thing. More than likely, it would also
Alan,
be
yeah.
it would be a safe choice. You're probably not going to get assaulted, and it would make for a good video in the background. Whereas I could give you a list of people that you could try that to, and you're probably going to wind up in traction.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you could try. Like, what do you want me to give you? Want me to give you like, okay, yeah, Bill Belichick. Yeah, you break your arms. Like it's like that's
I don't think he'd laugh. I think he'd just look at you.
yeah, he's a robot. Well, it's also like warn you people about something. These viral prank videos and these TikToks that people like these days. See the video of that guy in Ohio who was walking around.
DoorDash.
He basically assaulted that DoorDash guy, and the guy shot him.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, be
No, the
careful.
DoorDash one.
Yeah, be
Yeah,
careful with your little viral prank things because
yeah.
not always a good plan. But it's one of those deals. One of those deals in the background. Just be careful. Be
F
careful.
around and find out.
No, I think see this is what I'm talking about. This is how you get assaulted. It's not that he'd be furious, he'd hit you. The man has no decorum, no taste. The man has no class whatsoever, and he amateur boxes for a living when he's not being a professional piece of shit on the internet. This is the kind of person that would hit you. Like, well, my advice, don't listen to Jake or Logan Paul in general. Those are not like people to take advice from about your life. How would you propose to stop him? How would you propose to stop him from hitting you? What are you going to tie him down? These are these weird hypotheticals in the background. Who do I think would hate it? Gary Busey. I think Gary Busey would hate it. I think Gary Busey might also try and take a swing at you. I think Bill Belichick would hate it. I
feel like most people would hate it.
I think I would hate it. I'm not a celebrity anyway.
If you go up to someone random and start tickling them, yeah,
I think
I'm not gonna be.
No, I think I would react to that very poorly, and I think a lot of people would.
Most people would. Yeah,
I think most people would. I think this would wind up in a court case depending on who you're opposing to deal with in the background here. I think Eddie Murphy would take a swing at you. I think Gary Busey would take a swing at you. Jerry Seinfeld would take a swing at you and then sue you, and probably win because he would have way more money than you. So just by sheer volume of money and lawyers, he would win. Yeah. So yeah, the vast majority of people. I think going up to tickling people would be a bad choice.
Yeah, if your instinct tells you to do that, you probably got to look elsewhere for advice.
Anyway, here's so within that. So we've got Baker was number 2. That makes sense. I mean, we've seen Baker have a decent season. Who's number 3?
Derek Carr, obviously. And I mean, these guys are interchangeable just based on your history having them or, whoever you like better of their surrounding cast. I feel they're pretty much essentially the same player. Ton of talent around them.
In a lot of ways, they are.
Yeah. I mean, they're the same right in the Kirkleyan tier of quarterback. And, if you're going for the steady Eddie, that's that's where you are. But
Kirkland tier. Oh God.
it's become a thing. It used to be the Andy Dalton tier. Now it's a Kirkland tier.
Don't insult Kirk Cousins by comparing him to Andy Dalton.
I'm saying he
Andy,
raised the bar. He raised the
it
bar.
is
He
definitely a
raised the
bar
bar.
raise.
Yeah, but it used to be the Andy Dalton line, but now it's a Kirkland tier. Over Dobbs, with the exception of his upcoming matchup, rest of season, I could probably talk myself into Gardner Minshew.
Yeah,
He's
that's an
got a
that's an interesting
terrible
one.
matchup this week against Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland just put the best NFL team in the league on notice. And
Well, the problem with Cleveland is not their defense. The
no, their
problem with
defense
Cleveland is their
is,
offense that is just putrid. Like
yeah.
that's the
But
real
if we're
problem.
talking about Gardner Minshew, that's all he's going to have to deal with is their defense. So that's why I wouldn't be big on him this week. Like, grab him and start him, but maybe grab him and stash. And if he starts playing like he did in Jacksonville, that could pay dividends later in the year, especially if you need
Yeah,
someone. Josh Dobbs is break glass in case of emergency.
yeah, I
If you
agree with
if
that.
you're
I agree with that.
um a couple names I've seen kind of floating around that I would totally avoid is Desmond Ritter. The
Oh
guy
yeah,
looks like
no,
he's about to get benched. I mean,
I want no part of that
he
whatsoever.
put up some points, but you can see the look on Smith's face. Like he is one more bad throw, I feel, away
We're going to
from
be back to
getting
Taylor
pulled.
Heineke.
Yeah. No,
It's and what's funny is Heineke would actually probably be an upgrade.
he would be at this point. I mean,
Uh,
Ritter, you've seen kind of start conservative. He was okay, and as soon as he kind of started to get loose with it, it just got
you know how I
sloppy
feel
real
about Taylor
fast.
Heineke and how bad I think he actually is in the background, and even I'm looking at that like put Taylor in. Oh my God, like at least he can snap the ball.
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of where we're at. So no, I'm with you. You want to know another name? Uh, Malik Willis. You're gonna have to prove that to me, dog.
Yeah,
You're gonna
that's
have to
another.
prove that to me.
Yeah,
I've seen
we've
it because
seen that.
Tannehill. It's looking like Tannehill is gonna miss some time.
Hmm.
They're trying to work out amongst themselves, and they have the bye this week to try to figure it out. But they're gonna try to work out amongst themselves. Is it gonna be Malik? Is it gonna be Will Levis?
Hmm.
What are we gonna do? I'm telling you that the answer to that is bad either way. They probably end up going with Malik, is my guess, because he's at least got a little more uh, real world experience here, whereas Will Levis is a true rookie,
Hmm.
and it was always supposed to be a long term project with Levis.
Right.
Uh, and I want no part of it. All I know about this is this: the Ryan Tannehill injury benefits one person the most, and it's Derrick Henry. Because if you were worried about Derrick Henry getting touches, because he was having some weird issues at the start of the year with not getting enough touches because they were working in Spears, that problem is over. Problem is done. It's back to Henry, 30 touches a game now. Doesn't matter what the score is. Because Will Levis looked so bad last year that he's going to have to prove it. Malik Willis looked so bad last year that he's going to have to prove it. And Will Levis just had corrective eye surgery earlier this year, back in September. Just so we're clear. I don't know. A lot of people didn't see that little news story because why would you? But just an FYI, Will Levis had laser eye surgery earlier this year. Bud's a little late. Hey, Bud, we just got done talking about this. So we have Derek Carr somewhere second or third in terms of streaming options. We agree amongst ourselves. Sam Howell is number one.
Hmm.
Sam Howell against the Giants is who you want. And then it's a coin flip between Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr for second and third. Pick whichever one you prefer. But those are the top three as far as streaming options. So let me know. But if Sam Howell's available, I'd rather play Sam Howell against the Giants. Much rather do that. And then, you could bicker back and forth about between Baker and Derek Carr. It is what it is. Do you have another name that you want to avoid? Because I have one more.
Um, Willis was the other name I was going to bring up.
Okay.
I guess honorable mention, I would go Tyrod Taylor
All right,
if
sure.
for
Fortunately, that
whatever
probably won't be a
reason
long-term problem.
gonna try to talk themselves into doing that. Don't overthink it. New York's a mess this year.
He's
So
also not good. The ship has sailed on that a long time ago. And I have one more, which is just a lot of people will ask, what do you think? I guarantee you this question will start getting asked. What do you think of Tyson Bagent? Is going to be the question. And what I'll tell you, I don't think of Tyson Bagent. You don't want Tyson Bagent. The Bears are a disaster. And if they're going to put Tyson Bagent out there to deal with the fact that Fields dislocated his thumb on Sunday and is now probably going to miss the next couple weeks, they're going to lose those games by 100. They're going to get pantsed
what
and
was it?
dragged around the
The
track.
Sun Times posted a front page of new Bajent or whatever, something like that,
The
and it was
secret
like,
agent, man, I've heard them all. Like
yeah, and it's like, what game did you guys watch? He came in and he was terrible.
you understand that's the
Now,
Sun Times, right? They're literally paid to be optimistic. Like that's the Sun Times is not a reputable. I mean, they have some level of
no,
journalistic integrity, but they're not the Tribune.
no, and you don't have to be to at least actually look like you watch the same
No,
game.
no, 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 no. That's not how that city works.
No,
You gotta rep the new kid. But they like Bajent. That's why they were willing to roll him out over Nathan Peterman,
uh,
who
it's Nathan
probably
Peterman
no one wants Peterman. But
aside
uh,
from John Gruden.
well, fortunately, we don't have to deal with that problem anymore. But yeah, Bajent not on fantasy radar. Like
No,
not even close. Like you'd have to go so far down into the basement to get to Bajent that I'm questioning like what else is available. There cannot be that barren. It's not even possible.
I take
Uh,
Zach Wilson before I took Bajent.
I take anything. I take the other guys that I just said I didn't want. Ritter, Willis, all of it. Like I would take anybody like over Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent would be my literal. There is no other quarterback available. This is what I have to do. That would be the only scenario where that
I'd
would
leave
be.
it empty. Leave it empty.
Even then, I might take a 0. But
Yeah.
you do know that like some leagues they make you start a full lineup. Like if you play on my fantasy league, you literally can't set a lineup without filling every position. They won't.
No.
But that is a problem for the future. And yeah, but that's number one. He draws the Giants. What more information do I need to give you? There's no further analysis. Like he's been the best of all of the streaming options all year, and now he plays the Giants. So let's go and look at this. Is going to be the other part of this that's actually like way harder. Let's real quick take a tour around and see specifically for Guillotine folks land. Who do you like? Because you got a lot of problems here with this. You got a quarter of the league on bye, and you got like people now that are hurt that are going to be missing time. So who got chopped that you might be interested in trying to fish around for in the background?
Cousins, if he's out there, definitely going after him. Purdy, Wilson, Watson, Stafford, all might be available too. And I think they have, season long upside where, they're not in the elite tier, but you're definitely going to be able to just set your lineup and not have to think, well, do I start him or do I pick someone up off the waiver wire? You get one of these guys, you're good to go. Probably wouldn't drop. I wouldn't go over 20.
Yeah, for pretty much any of these guys. The only one that I might pay a little more than that for was if by some miracle Jalen Hurts was available, or
Mm,
Mahomes or Allen. Like those are the big ones, but those guys probably didn't play bad enough to get your team cut at this point. We also don't really need to sit here and explain like if Jalen Hurts is available, you should pick him up. If Patrick Mahomes is available, you should pick him up. I feel like we don't really need to have that conversation. But yeah, I agree. Like Purdy would be interesting, just
mhm.
given the raw efficiency of Purdy at this point. It's not sexy, but it's very efficient. And he kind of needs to throw 2 touchdowns for him to be viable from a fantasy perspective. But the problem is he's been doing that. The only
Yeah.
fly in the ointment I have for Purdy is CMC is going to miss some time. We're going to get into that here in a minute. And then you have the idea that Debo Samuel is also potentially going to miss some additional time. So he's going to be without two of his better weapons, so that kind of makes me downgrade him slightly. But neither of those are considered to be season-ending injuries. And then yeah, Cousins, sure, if that's what you want to do. I will say I don't really like Cousins very much this week because he's playing the 49ers. So granted, that's at home, but still, don't much care
Well,
for that.
I think you're missing a very important detail with that. It's in prime time too, so that's another factor to take
Oh,
into
the
consideration.
primetime Kirk Cousins splits people are here today to talk to me about this. Sure, we can note that. I don't put as much faith into that as other people, although I do understand why it gets bandied around. He has a much stronger disparity than normal people
If
would
you're
have.
superstitious,
Yeah.
keep it in mind.
Yeah, if you're superstitious, I agree. That's something that you might want to think about. I don't tend to buy into weird anomalies like that, but I can understand if you're using it as a split, as a decision. And there's just some other folks that like Trevor Lawrence is not something I would start this week, but if he was out there and I could get him for less than $5,
Hmm.
in my especially in a guillotine league, and I wanted a backup. Like, let's say I have a really good team. You know what I mean? Let's say I'm probably going to go the distance. Lawrence might be worth it as a if especially if I'm like rostering Mahomes and I'm not carrying a backup. Might be worth it. They've actually been slowly trying to turn the corner over there, and their schedule gets kind of interesting down the stretch. This is also where it's finally acceptable here in the next couple of weeks to start looking at schedules. I don't put too much stock into it because things change week over week, but starting in around like week 9 or 10, you can start looking at schedules because you can start figuring it out. I agree with Stafford, by the way, that him having Cooper Kupp back and still keeping Puka relevant, and Kyron Williams is only really supposed to miss one game. That team is going in the right direction. So I
Hmm.
would hitch my wagon to that star, as the expression goes, because it'll also still be relatively cheap. People are still kind of scared of Stafford, I think, and considering the price, I'm interested. So yeah, Purdy, Stafford, these are things that if they're available, I would want to take them. And then as a streamer, it'd be Howell. But it's rough out there right now, man. With all the teams on bye, especially for your um do 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 do. Gino is available. That's weird. Why is Gino available in your league? That's not really a streaming option. That's like no, I would play Gino over Arizona. I just never thought that it would be possible that that would be available.
Over who's the other
Sam Howell
option?
over Sam Howell. Gino draws Arizona. Sam Howell draws the Giants. Both of them have great matchups.
Yeah, I'd probably lean Howell there just because I feel Gino's kind of been up and down
Oh, he
this year.
very much has been up and down. I can
So
speak from experience on this. I rostered Geno Smith in a league. It's been a
yeah,
real roller coaster.
yeah. So I would just feel more comfortable with Sam Howell. I mean, but that again, if he's going against Arizona, take your pick.
Yeah, you really can't make that decision wrong. I'd probably play Geno if it was up to me, but you're only talking about like 3 spots in my quarterback rankings. It's really not. It's really not that serious. So yeah, and then the other one that might be available is Jordan Love coming off the bye. If I could get Jordan Love for $5, I'd be willing to hold on to it for another week or two, just on the off chance that they might be able to get a running game going. They're playing Denver this week, so if they can't figure out how to run the ball now, they ain't figuring that out. And then you can go ahead and start cutting Packers. So you have 1 week, in my eyes, Packers, to do something. And if you can't figure out how to get a good running game out of somebody this week, it's time to start cutting Packers off your team and moving on. We're moving on. Like we're not dealing with this problem in perpetuity. It's too crappy. All right, let's move into running back here. Um, who to drop? Evans or Mason?
Are you
I'm
talking Zach Evans?
I'm assuming it's either that or it's Chris Evans because there
Okay.
ain't no way it's Mike Evans.
Yeah, that would be uh
It's got to be one of the other lesser Evanses. Well, I'm not dropping. Wait, hold on a second. Who's the guy who's starting for the Rams this week, theoretically? Zach Evans is who's
Zach
starting
Evans
for the Rams
should
this week.
be, but if Rivers is healthy, I mean, he was also getting some snaps
Yeah, okay.
early.
Zach Evans or Jordan Mason. That's what it
Okay.
is. And Rivers is questionable. Kyron Williams is
Yeah.
functionally doubtful. I don't really want to drop either one, if I'm honest.
But at the same time, do you want to roster both of them too?
No, and it
They're
depends on who if you're not, and it says in here not starting either one. So who do you want to hold? Well, then the answer is Jordan Mason because Zach Evans only has value for like this week. And then they're going to get Kyron Williams back, and Rivers will probably be back, and then Evans goes back to being third on the depth chart, and he means nothing.
yeah.
Whereas
They
Jordan Mason is working on stealing Elijah Mitchell's backup role because Elijah Mitchell's been beat up, and for the next probably 2 weeks, they're both going to play heavily.
yeah.
They're both going to be rosterable and possibly startable, and you're hoping that Mason balls out of control the next 2 weeks, and you can approach. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why he's. I know what you meant. It's a PCL sprain. Like the problem with Rivers. That's why Rivers is probably going to miss the next couple weeks. He's actually kind of more hurt than Kyron Williams is.
Mm.
Kyron Williams is like a low ankle sprain, and they're just going to give him the week off and hope that with a week of week off practice and then another week to kind of ramp up, but he can just turn the corner.
Right.
PCL sprain is usually a 2-week injury minimum. Like you're going to miss 2 games. You might miss 4. But they probably don't think it's that serious because otherwise they would have already put him on IR. Since they had the MRI, they all had MRIs today. So you're telling me that it's like, yeah, Zach Evans is the one that I would probably drop unless I had to play him this week. Because what you're hoping is that Mason over the next 2 to 3 weeks while McCaffrey is recovering can ball out of control, take that backup role, the lion's share of it at least, and then you can approach the CMC manager and flip that onto their team right at the trade deadline and get yourself something nice. Maybe not nice, but something you could use. Because once we get past that point to the trade deadline here in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you don't need to be rostering Jordan Mason unless you already have CMC. There's no point for you to be continuing to do that. You want to try and get that onto the other person's team to make that all function. So that segues us into the idea that let's talk about running back. And obviously the big news is, Christian McCaffrey injured, going to miss the next probably 2 to 3 weeks because honestly, there is no reason to rush him back. The 49ers are in a really good spot and they need him for the haul. They need him for the playoffs. They don't really need him to beat Minnesota, for example. You could do that without him. So if you've got CMC, this is what always happens. This is why I've been talking about it all year. You don't drop the CMC handcuff because you get cocky and complacent. You don't do it. You've got to have that player because now this is going to start to get expensive. The only thing that's helping you right now is that no one knows who that is. It's Elijah Mitchell, who's now back from his own injuries. But in the meantime, Jordan Mason has been playing pretty well and has been starting to build a case for more playing time with the 49ers. So this week now, for the next couple weeks, what you're going to watch is you're going to watch timeshare between Mitchell and Mason. And I couldn't even tell you what the split is. No one knows. Shanahan might have some idea, but he ain't talking. Shanahan famously does not give a shit about your fantasy team either, just so we're clear. So he's not going to tell you anything. That's what's going on in the background. So I say all that to say the number one claim this week for me and things that are widely available is Zach Evans, largely just based on the idea that he's probably starting this week. And that's kind of where you're at. It's if you need something to get you over the hump, it's Zach Evans. Number 2 is Elijah Mitchell because he's been dropped in a million leagues. And that's kind of where it is. 3 is Jordan Mason for reasons that are obvious. Number 4 is Tajay Spears, the contractually obligated to discuss Tajay Spears. Although we are almost to the point, Lance, where believe it or not, we might not have to have this conversation for too much longer.
Really?
Yeah, he's up to like 44%.
It's getting close.
Yeah, he's getting very close. So we might not have to have this conversation for too much longer. And especially with the quarterback situation now, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, don't really need some of this stuff the way that they used to. So if that all kind of makes sense. And then beyond that, it's just the other guys that I kind of continue, like Zach Charbonnet. We're getting to that point in time where it's put up or shut up time with him. So very soon he's either going to be a thing or he's going to be droppable. And the only other one that I might recommend is it might be worth taking a look at Kareem Hunt, but that's pretty low on my list, if that makes sense. I would need to be pretty desperate. That's why he's so far down here. But it is slim pickings at running back, my friend. Does any of that fill you with confidence? Like, so what do you think? What do you like?
There's a lot of projects out there. There's not a clear-cut answer, but there's a lot of people who it's like, okay, well, he might work into a backup role, or he might take a little bit of snaps away from, these guys. I like all the guys you mentioned. Another one, I'm not going to shut up about Justice Hill or any other Ravens running back. They have the best rushing attack in the league. And even if you got to chase it a little bit, I definitely think it's worth chasing.
They're just not scoring touchdowns is the problem.
They're not.
And Gus Edwards doesn't catch passes. Like, Gus Edwards just puts up a 6 every single week.
Well, I think Gus Edwards is over the roster. I could be wrong on that.
Oh, he is. Yeah. But it's like,
but
he's outscoring Justice Hill by putting up a 6 every week. And then it's not. That's kind of a misnomer. Hill had one good game in there that skews that.
You're getting some volume there, which, I mean, if you're looking on the waiver wire, you're looking for volume.
I understand. Okay? It's super ugly.
You can chase touchdowns if you want, but they're gonna come and go. Volume is gonna be there for a while. Another one that could be an interesting. I think if you need someone for this week, he's actually playing a pretty tough matchup with the Ravens, but Craig Reynolds could end up being the starter in Detroit. And you've seen the type of volume that they give David Montgomery when he's healthy. If Craig Volumes could eat into some of that, he could be a star for 1 week, and then,
Oh, the Craig Reynolds 1 week pump and dump?
Yep.
Boy, I've seen that movie before. Usually ends up really sad.
It always is.
Seen that movie a couple times. They always talk about this, and then it doesn't work the way you want it to.
No.
Notice, I didn't even mention Craig Reynolds, even though a lot of outlets are talking about Craig Reynolds, and I'm just sitting there like, I just don't believe. I just don't. Call me cynical.
I think it'll be a 1 week thing. The biggest issue I'm seeing with it is a tough matchup in the Ravens, but even that, you give them enough volume, something's bound to at least get you to a serviceable amount that you're looking to get to if you're picking up Craig Reynolds. So, Devin Singletary would be the final name that I would mention. Of the names that you didn't mention that I saw on here, he outproduced Dameon Pierce. Now, Houston's rushing attack has not looked the same as it did last year. It's not an attractive backfield by any means, but if he's able to come in there and at least steal some of the workload, it's worth monitoring. I don't know if you'd be at the point where you'd be ready to roster him yet, but I'd definitely keep a finger on the pulse. And
it's worth noting that he out-touched Pierce and was more efficient with the touches that he got than Pierce. I don't know if Pierce is hurt or if he's just kind of losing it, but he has not been having a particularly good year in the background over there. Don't think I'm really ready to deal with that in the background yet. So he's pretty low on my list still. I think I'd probably like Rico Dowdle over that. It's like there's a lot of guys that are like way down here in the background that I'd probably rather do over Singletary. Texans pass catcher? Sure. Texans running back? No. no, we're not doing that anymore. What about specifically for Dynasty here in the background? Or Dynasty, jeez.
Guillotine.
For Guillotine, like you got 6 teams on a bye. Some people probably got chopped. Who of the like normal people are you interested in sending people out to go look at? This is rough.
Alexander Madison
Yeah,
is.
I warned everybody. I warned you it was rough. It was rough.
He's not going away though. He's fumbled. He's dropped passes. They traded for Cam Akers and they still continue to feed him. And with Justin Jefferson out, and it is hideous and it is ugly, but he is getting volume. So at that point, if you see Alexander Madison on the, in your Guillotine League on the wire, it's definitely someone worth having because he's not going away. He's not going away anytime soon.
He's like a bad penny. It just keeps coming back. It just won't go down. Like it's really ugly, but it just keeps happening.
Yeah. No, he is persistent to say the least. John Taylor.
Okay, I was just gonna get John Taylor. We'll just do it now. So go ahead, and then I'll come over the top.
Zach Moss is still getting a decent amount of the workload. Taylor put up 9 points this week, which is okay, but for what you expect to see from John Taylor, it's not anywhere close. So you have to be picky with your bid here because someone's going to jump in there, and because it's John Taylor, throw a bunch of money at him. You don't want to do that, but at the same time, he's still someone worth keeping an eye on if you can get him for the right price.
Yeah. Okay. So it's similar type of logic. Jonathan Taylor, they were going to work him in slowly we've been talking about this for a while. They were likely going to work him in slowly. That's the issue with this. And then you got to figure out what's going on. So for my money, we're getting to the point where they're going to start cutting him loose relatively soon here. So if we haven't seen that in the next 2 weeks, then it's not happening. And it's going to be a split between him and Zach Moss probably for the rest of the year. And it's just going to be really frustrating to figure it out. And then this is a problem that will kick the can down the road for next year. But yeah, I wouldn't blow the whole fab budget, but it is something I want on my team because we're getting to the point where decisions are going to be made, if that makes sense. The die is going to get cast, and you'd rather have him on your team for when he blows up. The problem is, if it's going to happen, the problem is you don't know exactly when it'll be, so you can't really start him right now. He's kind of not really startable, but it's worth holding on to because he's still one of the best lottery tickets that exists. The question is, can he get back to form, and are they going to be willing to give him the whole role? And it's like just Zach. It's just because Zach Moss has been playing so well. That's the problem that we've been running into here. Is he's been playing so well that he's kind of carved out enough of a role for himself that they don't seem to want to like go away from the hot hand. But you got to believe that talent will win out on that in the background. So, but I'd say if that's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next like 2 weeks. And then if it's not, you can feel free to move on. Because at that, they don't run the ball enough to support 2 running backs. You know what I mean?
No.
And so that's the situation. This is why I also am not recommending people go out and blow a huge amount of money on Zach Moss. Because I think the shelf life for Zach Moss is very limited. I think that's going away here soon. And then it goes back to being Jonathan Taylor's job as he gets rounded into NFL form, because he missed like everything. He missed training camp. He missed the whole beginning of the season. They're not just going to throw him in there and give him the whole job. He'll probably get hurt if you tried. So they got to like ease him in a little bit in the background. That's what you got to do. So it's a situation like that we got to kind of gently navigate in the background. Okay. So yeah, and then there's a few other ones that are worth kind of looking at in the background. It's a lot of the guys that got hurt. Miles Sanders is one to look at. Joe Mixon had a bad week and then is on the bye. So worth looking at there. Tony Pollard probably kept you alive. I don't want Pierce. No. Let somebody else bid on that. But the one I do want, if it somehow happened, if you're insanely lucky, uh, Brees Hall. If Brees Hall was somehow out there, I'll give you something real nice for that. I'd break one of my own rules for Guillotine and probably overpay for that at this point, considering we're at the halfway point of the year. He played 68% of the snaps last week. It was actually just about right at 70. That's more than he's played all year. He looked great. Even in a bad matchup, he looked good. He's starting to look like Brees Hall pre-injury, Brees Hall, finally. And it's something I've got my eye on. He's kind of moving up in the background. And we already mentioned it, Derrick Henry. Shame he didn't have a bad week last week because he'd be widely available. Other honorable mentions, Aaron Jones playing Denver this week. If Aaron Jones is available, 1 week, treat it as a 1 week rental with upside in a Guillotine league. Because if they can't figure it out this week, then game over for the Packers. We are done. I'm done recommending any Packers at that point. And then the one that's kind of a rail splitter for me is James Cook. James Cook, they've clearly made the decision in Buffalo that James Cook is not good enough as a pass protector to have that role. That's just what it is. People are saying, oh, well, James Cook, he put up 2 stinkers in a row. And I'm like, no, it's a bigger problem than that. When you actually watch it all the way down, it's not that he just didn't have a good game. It's that he is now in a timeshare with Latavius Murray. A full-on timeshare. And 33-year-old Latavius Murray he's in a timeshare with him. And I'll tell you, and I know, and there's a reason why. It's because Latavius Murray is a lot better as a pass protector. Zach Moss is really struggling in protection, and that's costing him playing time. He went from playing 75% of the snaps to now he's playing like not even 60. And it's because when they go hurry up, they need somebody to help protect Josh Allen's blindside. Cook can't do it. So now what you're telling me is Cook is basically just a running back, the first and second down running back. That's way less attractive than what he was supposed to be getting and what he was getting at the beginning of the year. James Cook is actually somebody that you're actually hoping that he has a great game this week. Trade him. Get him off your team. Go find somebody who still believes, get him off your team, move on. Because you can probably still get something nice if he has one more game, because people will see the Bills and they'll be like, oh, okay. But the problem is, like, no, there's a real system change happening in Buffalo. Latavius Murray, and what's frustrating is it doesn't even mean like go pick up Latavius Murray, because none of that generates meaningful points for Latavius Murray.
No, they're just going to eat into each other's workload, and
So now nobody gets anything nice. No one gets any nice toys. Now because James Cook can't pass protect, not only does
ruined
he
it for everyone.
He takes a hit in value. Latavius Murray takes an increase in value, but not enough to make him fantasy viable. So basically, it just sinks them both. And then, nice of them to not sign Leonard Fournette, by the way, because I was about to literally have like a hissing temper tantrum on this show. I was already preparing for it earlier today about that. But even with Harris going down now, I don't think it changes much. Because Harris's only role was to be a bruiser at the goal line. That was his only job. He didn't do anything else besides slam into people at the goal line. And that's only because they don't want Josh Allen doing that anymore.
Not in the regular season.
Yeah, maybe in the playoffs. But that's kind of it. So it's slim pickings out there, man. Running back is a mess. Like we said a lot of stuff about Jonathan Taylor. Even with that, with 6 teams on bye, Taylor this week is still like RB20.
Yeah.
You don't want to play him, but you might not have a choice because there's just so many bad choices that exist out there. So real quick, and then we'll do wide receiver, and then we'll pretend to do tight end, and then we'll be done. This is Chuck's team in the background that he was asking about keepers. I would need to know what the relative values are for what you could keep these people at. But this is why. We always say look at running backs and wide receivers, because you have like 3 wide receivers I'd rather keep before we get to any quarterback on your team. I can't imagine Puka is expensive.
Aside from Puka and Michael Wilson, I'd probably keep every single one of those wide receivers.
Well, I might keep Puka even. If
Yeah.
Puka's like a 16th round pick,
Yeah.
which it probably is, because like Mostert is on the list. I'm less enthused about Aaron Jones because that's probably expensive. You could probably redraft him next year for cheaper. Derrick Henry, same thing. Kendre Miller is not keepable.
No.
Tajay Spears is interesting. Yeah, see what I mean? Look how cheap that is. Like, that's basically free. So it's like we go to wide receiver, and you start getting into things that I'm interested in. Puka, Waddle, Ayuk, Flowers are all things that I would be looking at. I can't imagine Flowers is that expensive. Waddle is probably the most expensive of them.
Mm-hmm.
What is Waddle? Probably like a 3rd round pick, second
If
or third
not,
round, something
yeah.
like that in a keeper.
Yeah.
Ayuk is probably like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to roll with Ayuk at a 6 or a 7 price tag. Fine with me. Puka at a 15 is very attractive because, my God, it's like, what's the risk? The upside versus the risk is insane on that equation. So you're gonna lean that way. Goddard is not keepable, and this is what Hurts at a 2nd round. No. Richardson, no. I'd almost rather go Stroud because I bet Stroud would be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to keep a quarterback, which I wouldn't. I would keep 3 of your wide receivers. So yeah, you could have Waddle for like an 8th or a 9. Right. So you see my point? Like, there's 3 or 4 wide receivers on that team that I would rather keep before. Yeah, Zach Moss, you can play this week, Aaron. It's fine. You got like 2 more weeks on it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while you can, buddy. You got like 2 more weeks on that particular equation, and then we're done. All right. So let's do wide receiver here, and then we can tight end is going to take all 5 seconds with that many teams on by. Wide receiver number 1 for me is Josh Downs. Big old exclamation point next to that. Josh Downs is up to 33% rostered. So get in on it now while you still can, because it's going away quick. He's seeing a lot of targets. The volume is there. Minshew's looking for him. Richardson was looking for him before that. It's weird to think that the Colts might actually be able to support 2 wide receivers, but with Minshew, they probably can. Because he loves to throw to Michael Pittman, and I love him for it. Makes my life really happy. Makes me really happy. So yeah, Downs is number 1. And then it's like a tier almost, where then you have a bunch of guys that are all kind of the same to me. You have JSN, Rashid Shaheed, Rashi Rice, Jameson Williams, and Wan'Dale Robinson. All in that next group of just slop. Order it how you want. I could see the argument for Jameson Williams. Yeah, he caught a really long pass. Good for him. Hooray. Good for you. And he's somebody they're going to try to get more involved. JSN is something that they're going to keep talking about it until the cows come home. Rashid Shaheed had a really good game finally, but it's not consistent. They all have problems. Rashi Rice has been flirting with being a fantasy thing for a long time, but he just can't get over the hump. You see my point? Like, there's just a lot of, like, you were talking about running back, and there's a lot of projects. For me, that's how I feel about wide receiver. It's Downs, projects. There's no, like, Downs is actually trending towards having a real role on a real team that you can kind of predict. Everybody else is a project that has some sort of problem. So I don't know who would you recommend at wide receiver? Because I'm imagining you've got a different order than what I have.
I'd agree with you. Downs is definitely the number one. I mean, you got Minshew coming in there. He enjoys targeting him. Um, I'm showing Tyler Boyd is just shy of 50%.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd's available if you want to do that.
Going on by, but I mean, if this Cincinnati offense gets back and clicking, I mean, I'd take their wide receiver 3 over multiple people's wide receiver 2, even some teams' wide receiver 1. Um, Josh Reynolds and Marvin Mims are also names that I see as under 50%, and
Yeah, they're all available too.
I'd be more interested in them before I get into, like you said, the projects, because all that's going to be is just a headache, is really at the end of the day, because you get one or a couple players like that, you're just going to tinker with your lineup all the way up until kickoff, and
Yeah, pretty much.
I just want to set it and be done with it. Quentin Johnston, he's got to do. I'd rather be a week
Droppable.
late. Yeah,
Droppable.
I'll
I
be
don't
a
want
week
Quinn. I'm not
late
interested.
on that.
Hey, remember that time I told everybody to go pick up Josh Palmer, and then everybody laughed at me, and then Josh Palmer had like 10 targets last night? Remember that? Remember that fun conversation? Oh, that actually might have been on Thursday. But we've been having that conversation for the last several weeks, where everybody would
Mhm.
call me crazy that I'm like, oh no, Palmer's just going to go right back to the job he had last year when everybody got hurt because Herbert trusted him. And guess what?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. If Palmer was still available, I'd be all in on Palmer. But you missed your boat on that.
hmm
Okay, so I see what your advice is. You're saying you'd rather go with like give me the stuff that I've kind of seen it a little bit. I don't hate the Josh Reynolds thing. The Josh Reynolds thing is getting muddied by the Jameson Williams thing.
And see,
That's that's the weird thing about that.
I feel like Reynolds just has a bigger role, and I feel like because Jameson Williams was this hyped up thing, and people a bit, he's looked good in the opportunities he's had. He just hasn't had a ton of opportunities in comparison to Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds has a clear role in that offense, and that's a number 2 for Amon-Ra. For Jameson Williams, it's going to be an uphill climb at this point, and I just feel more comfortable with Reynolds at this point before I start taking stock in, well, let's see if Jameson Williams can continue to grow and build and this and that. I've seen it with Josh Reynolds.
Well,
So,
Reynolds was on his way to being a fantasy RB wide receiver 3 last year before the knee injury derailed his season.
yep.
And so he's kind of on that pace right now, where he's
Yeah.
right
And
on
I'm,
the fringes of being a wide receiver 3. He's just valuable enough that for the buys, he becomes somewhat interesting if I need
mhm,
wide receiver help.
right.
So you do run into that. But yeah, it's kind of a mess. That's kind of why I was going through it the way that it was. The one that doesn't get enough credit is Wandale Robinson. And I'm going to continue to talk about this because I understand that it's the Giants and the Giants suck, and none of that is wrong. The Giants do suck. It's what it is. Wandale Robinson's averaging like 8 targets a game. Like that's the crazy thing that's happening in the background. He has buried like 3 people. Bye Paris Campbell. Bye. Enjoy the bench. Go sit on the bench. Like bye Sterling Shepard. Bye. Don't matter. Bye. Like Wandale Robinson has just bye Isaiah Hodgins. Remember how we went through like all those Giants wide receivers at the beginning of the year? Like, yeah, he's buried like all of them. The only Giants wide receivers that actually matter at this point, and there's only one that actually matters, is Wandale. He's available in like 88% of leagues. You want to talk about volume? He's getting the volume. That's the guy. He's the one that whether it's Tyrod or it's Daniel Jones, that's who they're looking for. It's almost like he's their best receiver, and it's not close. Hyatt can't beat Darius Slayton off the depth chart. You got to be able to do that if you want to have success in the NFL. Career, Darius Slayton. You got to be able to beat that. Like if you want to have that a real role. So Wandale is the one that I know it's a crappy team, but I bring this up all the time. Don't just focus on the good teams. You got to look at the bad teams too, because sometimes people don't want to get involved in the bad teams because it's a headache. Dobbs, Wandale, Reynolds.
Dobbs and Reynolds.
No, I think it's one.
Hmm?
I guess you could order it.
Oh, yeah, I feel I'd probably stick with that. Dobbs, Reynolds, and then Wandale.
Yeah. See, the Dobbs thing is terrifying to me. I would probably go Dobbs, Wandale, Reynolds. Reynolds would be higher, but he just doesn't get the volume. That's the issue. And now he's got more competition. I like how you specify, Aaron. We know who you mean. There's only one Kyler. Yeesh. 3 weeks, something like that. Week 10. Haven't even heard any rumblings of him getting ready to get activated. They haven't
Yeah,
activated the window. Like,
you don't want to drop Daniel Jones or, someone
I
else,
would be
and
fine with
then.
dropping Daniel Jones just on aggregate, but I don't really want to drop
But if
him.
you're gonna drop him and then pick up Kyler and then have Kyler not even play this season,
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind
yeah,
of where
not helping
I'm
you.
like,
Not helping you.
keep the guy who's gonna help you as opposed to trying to get on something that might not even be a thing. I mean, you might as well, until you hear something, you might as well pick up Tom Brady. You know, that's kind of where it's at.
Okay. Okay. All right. So for Guillotine, then, uh, it's kind of nasty, as we've been mentioning out there right now, with things that might have gotten you killed. That the problem with wide receiver is that it's always a little bit of a challenge, right? Well, that's kind of what we've been identifying as we go through this. Like, I'm still going to stick to my guns on I'm not interested in KJ Osborne. I understand the weather wasn't great for that game. You're going to have to do better than 8 points.
Yeah.
And people are saying, like, Jordan Addison, Jordan Addison, not great. He still gets red zone targets. So, and I know you're looking for Justin Jefferson replacements. So, I mean, obviously, if Jefferson's available in your Guillotine League, you want to spend up for that because he's not done for the year, more than likely, especially if you're a good team and can afford it. We talked about
Yeah.
that last week. So, who do you recommend as far as things that could be available in the background?
For Guillotine,
Yeah.
I'm seeing Devontae Adams, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, and Puka all had subpar weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd go after Adams, and
So would I.
I would probably be willing to double. I would go probably 150 on Adams if you can get him. I mean,
I
that's
don't disagree.
definitely, you're gonna give yourself a leg up. This is one of the players that you got to spend up for because he's irreplaceable. Yeah, you're getting the chance to get him because he just had a bum week, and that might have killed the team that you're on. But more often than not, he's gonna show out. He's gonna get a ton of volume in this offense, even with them, getting Jacoby Myers some work. So I'd probably put him number one. Number two is kind of a coin flip between Devonta Smith and T. Higgins, and then after that it gets into Debo, Metcalf, and then so on and
Yeah.
so forth.
And I can give you, like, I would rather T. Higgins over Devonta Smith. T. Higgins isn't playing particularly well because the Bengals are kind of having problems with injuries.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to work out between Burrow and then Higgins himself, but they're going into their bye and they're going to get a week to try to get healthy. So I'm expecting the Bengals to kind of like round into form a little bit here. Devonta Smith is going to be a headache all year long. It's going to be
Yeah.
this huge headache that you have to deal with. And as a bonus, it's going to be expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of willing to let somebody else deal with that problem. I won't roster Debo because he's been brutal all year and he's clearly hurt. And if I had my way about it, I actually wish they would IR Debo for 4 weeks. Let him actually get healthy. Because he is not healthy. And they're using him as a decoy. And I don't want to spend what that's going to cost because you're dealing with name value.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a question about DK Metcalf. Has Geno Smith murdered the value out of DK Metcalf at this point? Because I don't think DK suddenly forgot how to play football. I think the issue with this, why DK's having a down year, is actually Geno Smith related.
Yeah, Smith is it's almost like he's regressed back to the Geno Smith we know.
He's dinking and dunking again. He's not
yeah.
taking shots down the field.
No.
His average depth of target has dropped to about 5 yards, and it's like it's brutal for a guy like DK Metcalf who's running down the field. And then you saw last week, I don't know if you actually watched that game, but at one point DK Metcalf,
he just shoved the corner.
Well, there was that, but DK Metcalf literally was wide open there was nobody within 5 yards of him, standing in the end zone.
Yep.
And he's just staring daggers at Geno Smith because Geno never saw him.
Yeah.
And it's like Geno's got no problem throwing the ball to Tyler Lockett. That seems to be
likes doing that.
That seems to be fine.
Yeah.
But he really doesn't want to throw it to DK, and there's something going on there. And I feel like the issue is Geno Smith. Like Geno has, I was just going to, regressed is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel like he's literally taking a step back, and he's not willing to sling it around like he was last year.
No.
And he's trying to turtle, and he just wants to take the safe completions. And it's really like that game between the Bengals and the Seahawks last week was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody won that game. Nobody won it. The Seahawks lost it. That's how that game literally proceeded. There was no winning by either team. The Seahawks just pooed themselves really aggressively at the very end of the game. They had diarrhea on national television. Like, that's literally what happened, and they should have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do, and the Bengals didn't play well.
No.
The Bengals are crawling on their hands and knees into this bye week, just trying to get healthy, because Burrow looks a little healthier, thank God for that. But Higgins played. He did not look like T. Higgins.
No.
He did not look fast. He did not look explosive. He looked like he was just trying to get through the game. And it's just one of those deals. But DK is another one where I don't really want to pay up for DK when his quarterback is killing him like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this is why receiver is a bleep right now, because it's the things that are underperforming are not things that I really want to invest in.
No.
I'm willing to pay up a little bit for T. Higgins because I believe that will get better. Other things, though, will it? Will it get better? This is why I'm like, should we just let other people spend their money on this and then just keep my money in my pocket? Wait for them to get eliminated and then pick it up after that?
Reconsider then.
Yeah. Reevaluate down the line. If I can start, potentially okay wide receivers right now, why don't I just do that? I don't know. It's not great, but you kind of covered the list. That was a very comprehensive list in the background. So we'll do tight end real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Tight end, as far as things that are available, is this brutal list. It's so brutal. It's so ugly. It's Luke Musgrave, the conversation that won't die. As much as I hate it, it's Luke Musgrave, but I really wouldn't want to start Luke Musgrave. It's more like if I need a body, it'll be Luke Musgrave. And then the other ones are Jonnu, but now they're actually starting to use both tight ends in Atlanta, which is great because it benefits no one. Pitts is still underperforming based on where you likely had to draft him, and then Jonnu now just siphons off some of that. But whatever, they seem to like to throw it to the tight ends. And then the third one is Michael Mayer.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's starting to kind of round into form a little bit. And this is when typically rookie tight ends can kind of get their feet under them a little bit through the stretch down the end of the year. And they need all the help they can get with the Raiders, especially if Adams is going to miss any time at all. And I will say, he is. I saw him at the combine. Mayer, and I saw him in college. He was big in college, but I always assumed that was because that was college. So he just looks huge. And I saw him at the combine, and it didn't really jump out at me when he was just in, his underwear running around out there. But when you see him in pads, that dude is huge. It's like, geez, that's a big boy. Like, that's a big boy. I can see why they like throwing to him. That's broadside of a barn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a big dude. He's not that guy from the Steelers who nobody's that size.
Freiermuth.
No. The other one. The other one they just not. Freiermuth is a big guy too, but I mean the other one
Washington.
Yeah, he's not that big,
Yeah.
but nobody's that big. That guy's like Andre the Giant sized.
Yeah.
But no, like I was impressed when I saw the Raider game or Sunday afternoon. I was like, damn, he is bigger than I thought he would be. He's big. He's a big boy. Like, sending him off to college, I bet was like cheaper than having him at home for his parents. You don't have to feed him anymore. Like, just feeding that guy. Like, what does he eat? Like, is he on like the Rock diet where it's like, okay, I gotta eat like
horse tranquilizers,
15 pounds of raw salmon? Like, it's basically the diet of a bear. Like, it's like that's ridiculous. Like, so yeah, he's a big boy. I'd be interested in him potentially as like a $1. I have an open roster spot. Sure, I'll take a flyer kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those that's worth monitoring. I don't know if you'd probably be ready to roster him yet, especially
if I had an open roster spot only. I'm not cutting anyone to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of get by without a backup tight end for a little bit.
For
the
majority of the year.
Yeah.
It's super brutal. Is there anybody I missed that would be available? You want to talk about Dalton Schultz, or do you think that I don't know? Like it. It's all.
I mean, is he still available? I don't.
Not really.
See him as.
Not really.
Yeah.
He's kind of back over the line. He dropped below it for a while, and now he's back over it. And
yeah. I'd be on that just because it's a Houston pass catching weapon, but I think he kind of covered the list pretty good. The only one I would include in that kind of Mayer, the keeping your finger on the pulse, would be Trey McBride. He's not the most attractive option. I mean, he did get season highs in receptions, targets, and yards this past week, and even if it is just a couple catches a game, since late last year, they kind of been working him in. So you take that into account with Zach Ertz's age, and eventually it might turn into a thing where all of a sudden they're playing a lot more, 12 personnel, getting both tight ends involved, and it'd be something to monitor. It's not something that I'm excited about yet, but it at least caught my eye this past week. So
okay, no, I did notice it too. I kind of chalked that up to that game went sideways pretty much immediately.
Yeah,
like they tried to throw it to Ertz and it basically careened off his hands and it almost resulted in a pick, and it just like that kind of set the tone for the day. Arizona, it cannot be stated enough how much they miss Connor. It was immediately apparent how much they miss James Conner. Because, man, you take that threat out of the game, and the opponent starts realizing they can just pin their ears back on Dobbs.
Tee off
on him, and Dobbs is not prepared for that, and their O-line's not good enough to keep him upright if that's going to be what they do. And it looked like what I've been talking about with the Packers, where it's like you got to be able to run the ball. That's how you're going to keep these defenses out of your face. And when they take Connor out of it and you watch Keontae Ingram run for 2.5 yards a carry, that doesn't scare nobody, man. It doesn't scare nobody. And they completely just ditched Amario De Mercario, as I've been calling him, because it rhymes. I know that's not his name. It should be Amario De Mercario, okay? I'm just saying. But yeah, Amari DeMarcado, to use his proper name. They just completely went away from it. And I'm like, this is why you're so bad. This is why you suck, Arizona. This is why you're bad. You make decisions like this that don't make no sense. It's the Giants West. It's just the West Giants. It's the same problems. Like, also, Brian Daboll looks like Humpty Dumpty. I've been trying to figure that out for like a year. Like, what does this remind me of? And I worked it out the other night. It's Humpty Dumpty. He looks just. Now, I'm not saying he is Humpty Dumpty. So get out of my face with these slander and libel thing. I said he looks like Humpty Dumpty, and I will defend that in court. I'll get
Never
a
seen
picture.
those two in the same room.
I'll get a poster board and put up pictures of both of them. That is irrefutable. He looks like Humpty Dumpty. Like he should avoid walls. He should not sit on walls. It just clicked the other night when I was watching it. I'm like, oh my god, that's what he looks like. It's Humpty Dumpty. He's perfectly egg shaped, and it's just like it just once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like it's burned into my brain now. He should avoid king's horses and king's men and all of that. Like it's all bad for him. But yeah, I just thought I would share because that's if you ever wonder what I'm thinking about when you're watching Giants games, you got to think of something that isn't watching the game because you'll literally have like some sort of aneurysm. They'll find you dead in your bathroom. Like you can't watch that for too long. You'll start having a random nosebleed, and it's like
God.
medicals. You'll go to the doctor, and the doctor will be like, "You were watching the Giants, weren't you?" And it's like, yeah, I told you not to do that. Like you can't.
Third one this week.
Your brain can't handle it. So it's really not great. But yeah, and then tight end as far as things that are available. I hate to just keep repeating myself, but honestly, unless it's Travis Kelce, I don't care what you do. There's no one I'm willing to spend up for. I mean, I might spend a little bit of stuff on like maybe a teeny little amount of money on a Mark Andrews or a Laporta or a Hawkinson or but like even Kittle is like the only thing that you got going for you if you're looking at Kittle is the idea that like it's total boom or bust. But now with CMC and Samuel beat up, they're probably going to have to get him involved. But that's the problem with Kittle. He scores a 21 or a literal 1. 3 touchdowns in a game followed by a 1. That's your life rostering Kittle. And it really makes a difference when they don't have all their weapons out there because then they have to get him involved. Otherwise, they use him to block.
Right.
And by the way, watch him block. He's great at it. That's why they use him for that. Like, I know it's weird because most of the time, tight ends can either catch and run routes or they can block. Kittle's one of the rare guys that can do both at an elite level.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they pay him.
At an elite level.
Yeah, that's why he gets paid the big bucks, is because he can do both parts of the job in a way that most people can't. But yeah, there's just nothing that I want to spend up on. What do you want to? You want to spend up on Dallas Goedert and spend the rest of your life pulling your hair out until you look like Homer Simpson? Because that's what you're going to do. Evan Ingram, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, it's all the same thing. Logan Thomas had a 20 and then he had a 1. You see my dilemma, Lance, with this, where it's like, okay, so basically it's Kelce, and then immediately everyone has problems.
Yeah, I think Laporta kind of came in, a little bit less than what you would have thought this week. So if he's out there, I'd definitely be interested. Again, I don't know that I would do too much.
Not spending $75 and making it my only waiver plan.
No.
Let somebody else do that.
Not even.
No tight end is worth that, with the exception of Travis Kelce.
Even Travis, I mean,
I'd put up a pretty penny for Travis Kelce just because then I don't have to have this discussion anymore. Think about it as it relates to my team. Just for the peace of mind. There's a reason that Travis Kelce moving forward is basically going to be a top 6 fantasy pick until he finally falls off a cliff. He already was.
Right.
But it's because he is the de facto, number 1 at his position. He's a wide receiver 10. I'm sorry. He's the equivalent to wide receiver 10. That's why you get to play him at tight end. It all goes back to my theory about this is why we shouldn't have tight end at all. It just shouldn't even exist. We should just have pass catcher, but okay. Yeah, there's like nothing at tight end that I'm really willing to spend up on. It literally is just stream it, set it and forget it, figure out something that makes you happy, and then just play the matchups. And don't spend a lot of money on any of it because none of it's consistent enough to matter. I wish I had better advice for people, but it's kind of the truth. Like, the best advice I can give is leave that money in your wallet. and spend it on something else. And you'll probably be happier that you had the money rather than not have the money. You know,
Hmm.
like people were all excited about Jake Ferguson. What's he done in the last couple weeks? Jack K, nothing.
Yeah.
So feel free to use the real word for that. Zach
Hmm.
Ertz is the other one that people are like excited for. What's he done the last couple weeks? Very little. Like he had one okay game in there, but like he hasn't done much. And this is the problem: is that everybody is like that at tight
Yeah.
end. There's no consistency whatsoever. I actually agree with you. I would put a bid in on Sam Laporta because going into last week he was hurt, right? But going
Hmm.
into last week's game, you'll know that leads a leading question. Uh, he is um he was leading the NFL. Sorry, hang on, reset that stat. Going into last week, Laporta was leading all tight ends in receiving yards. Not what I had on my bingo card. I'll tell you that right now.
No.
And then he was hurt and he turned in a bad game. I acknowledge that. But at least that's something you can hang your hat on with Laporta. He ceded that back to Kelsey, by the way, on
Hmm.
Thursday night, which, you would. But it was very intriguing to see that Laporta was leading all tight ends through 5 weeks in the NFL. So he's not anymore, but it's worth looking at Laporta in the background. He is the incredibly rare, once in a lifetime blue moon event uh, where a rookie tight end actually matters a little bit
Hmm.
to an extent, to the extent that any tight end matters. Normally, you can just take all the rookie tight ends and just throw them away. Revisit that conversation in like week 10 or 11. But yeah, even like Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson have their issues at this point. They're a little less volatile for sure, but they're not like. Remember when there used to be like a big 3 or a big 5 at tight end? That doesn't really exist anymore.
No.
Now it's Kelsey is his own tier by himself. Andrews and Hawkinson are basically the next tier by themselves. And then it starts to get and then the ugliness starts.
I'd
You can
throw
put
the
Laporta. You can put Laporta
Yeah.
in there if you want. I don't care. That's fine. Like, but after that, that's when the ugliness starts
Hmm.
really, really aggressively. So it's just one of those things where it's like there's just no point in spending up for a tight end. And as a fun bonus, with 6 teams on bye, it's hard to find tight end replacements. So you're pretty much just going to have to hold your nose and roll with what you've been rolling with. And that's how bad it is that Michael Mayer, just because he's a large man who got like 4 targets, made the list. Where it's like, sure, look at him go. But anyway, Lance, parting thoughts on our way out the door here. Let's hang it up here for tonight, and then people can tune in on Thursday and get their lineup questions answered for Roster the People, which uh, we will have Mike Berland filling in for the nerd because the nerd does not like you, and he wanted me to tell you that he's sick of your questions and your crap, and that he doesn't have time for you anymore. He's got concert tickets, and he needs to go to a concert rather than doing his job. And he wanted me to say all that verbatim. He wanted to make it clear that it is personal, and I will make sure that that message gets relayed on Thursday as well.
Way to put a nice bow on it.
Had to do it. I had to do it to him. I regret nothing.
Oh, that's great.
Final thoughts, Lance. What do you think? What do you think? Any final advice for this week that we didn't cover?
Survive the buys. It's the name of the game right now. You got to survive the buys. I wouldn't go all in necessarily on any waiver wire targets that we've got. Some guillotine, I might say otherwise. Devontae Adams would probably be the number one.
Devontae
And
Adams would also be my number one. I would be willing to break one of my rules, and I would spend more than what I'm usually comfortable with. I'd put 150 up. That's a good number
mhm,
for it. You got a shot at winning it, and if you don't win it, it's
yeah,
okay. But you made a real run at it.
right. And for your typical waiver wire, you could talk yourself into one of the running backs, but I'm definitely more invested in Josh Downs and seeing where that goes with Minshew under center, because I think there's a lot of potential there, and I don't think they've hit the ceiling yet.
Now, Downs is my number one waiver wide receiver. He's very close to the number one overall waiver pick.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those situations where it depends on what you need. But if you're looking at wide receivers, he would be my number one choice because, boy, I can't express to you enough, Lance, how many Josh Downs shares I have in Dynasty. I have all of them. I hold all the Josh Downs shares in Dynasty. I made it a point to get him in the second round of like every Dynasty draft that I had the opportunity to do it. I just went and just collected it like freaking Thanos collects rings. Like, because it's just because of my preseason analysis of him coming into the league, where the Colts need a slot. Reggie Wayne is their wide receivers coach, knows a little something about football. Reggie Wayne also loved him and pounded the table to get him there. And then it's just all the college tape he had where he's just such a natural slot.
Mm-hmm.
He makes that job look so easy on film where it's like, it's not that easy. But he's very, very good at getting in and out of his breaks, and his routes are super clean. And that's one of those things where it's really hard to teach people route running. Some people play in the NFL for years and they never actually learn how to run routes. Cordero Patterson is a great example of that. All the athleticism in the world, couldn't run a damn route to save his life. Gun to his head, couldn't run a route. And that was a problem in college, and it killed him at the early part of his career. So much so that they made him play running back and run kicks. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you're just never going to be a real wide receiver. You just cannot run these routes consistently enough. Whereas like Adam Thielen is 33 and will probably he could play until he's 35 because he can run routes.
Mm-hmm.
So he just gets open because he's just so good at running those routes, and he gets in and out of his breaks. He gets off the line well, and he knows the secret sauce of like, nope, it's here and then cut hard immediately. And you can either do that or they can teach you some of that, but it's at a certain level, it's either you can do it or you can't.
Instinctual.
And Josh Downs just makes that look so easy. He's born to do it. Or it's just like you can't teach people to run routes like how he's learned how to run these routes. And the nice thing about that is I don't even need you to learn some sort of crazy ass aggressive route tree. I basically need you to know how to run 4 routes. And he's got them all coming in from college, and I'm like, great, that's all I needed. So he's got pretty good hands. I just wish if he was a little bigger, he would have probably been drafted earlier. Yeah. He's just a little small, which might cause some problems down the road. But for right now, no, I'm in on it.
Smooth
and yeah,
sailing.
survive the buys is good advice. We have 6 teams on bye this week. No teams on bye in week 8, and no teams on bye in week 12. But in week 13, just to screw with people, right before the last week of the fantasy regular season, 6 teams are on bye for that too. So like that's the way they chose to do it this year. Why they didn't just do a couple teams on bye in week 8 and in week 12, I don't know.
It's because they hate us.
It's
because they hate us.
That's the working theory. That is the working theory. So, all right. Well, with that, Lance, it's been a pleasure as always, sir. I'll talk to you on Tuesday. Tune in, everybody, on Thursday for Roster the People, and then Locked In is on Friday for the gambling stuff as per usual, and then tune in again on Sunday for the final countdown, where we'll answer last-minute questions for the last hour before kickoff. But until then, keep up the nonsense and have a week. Bye, Lance.
Take care.